Good evening, TDN listeners and viewers. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Interview, another 2 hour special. We're starting at 7 p.m. We're starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 o'clock in Dominica. It's Wednesday, and today is the 14th of December. 2022. Welcome everyone to this special episode of This Week in Interview. We're doing a 2 hours because I wanted to have a conversation with some of the folks who went up as independent candidates in the last election in Dominica, and also because it's coming up on the festive season. There is a new book that is out that I wanted to introduce you to, so it might make a perfect gift for the young people in your lives, or for anybody else. As a matter of fact, it's incredible reading. So we're doing 2 hours from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I am going to be talking to Mr. Tyron Nicholas Flacco and Mr. Clint Roll. Both they contested the last election in Dominica. Uh, some people say in defiance of the boycott from the opposition forces. They contested the election, one in the Rosenhof constituency and one in Wesley. I want to just talk to them to find out what's next. We had Flacco on before while he was preparing in advance of the election, and I wanted to bring him back to get his perspective on that experience. The parliament in Dominica has the parliament in Dominica has been sworn in. Roosevelt Skerritt has been returned gotten sworn in as the prime minister, and he announced a full cabinet, a full cadre. We would want to talk a little bit about that. What do you think about the size? What do you think about the assignments? What does the appointments in the different ministries tell you about where the government is going to place emphasis and priorities? So we'll talk about that a bit, and from between 7 and 8 p.m. I am hoping to be, rather hoping we are going to be joined by Flacco. From both my guests are joining from Dominica. We know sometimes the connections are a little bit challenging, but we'll work our way through it. Clint, I know, is trying to get backstage, and Flacco should join us. Welcome, everybody. As I said, I always invite you to invite someone to share that time with us. I think that the information we share on This Week in Interview is valuable information, and the most people who can join and learn and share with us is the stronger our knowledge, the stronger the movement that can result from that knowledge be. If you are joining me for the first time tonight, I want to tell you welcome, very special welcome to you. I hope you like what you hear tonight sufficiently that you would want to become a regular listener. And to my regular listeners every Wednesday, I have folks who's been with me practically every Wednesday for the last uh, 8 years, maybe. Yeah, we've been around for a while. And those folks are regular listeners to This Week in Interview. And I want to tell you, I appreciate you so much. We're coming up on the end of 2022. And I think we had a strong 2022. We added some more resources in the background to help us to get guests. And I think it's worked. Today, I got a suggestion from a listener when I sent out the reminder. One of the the audience says that I need to get guests who are sympathetic, was his word, to the government, so that we can get a balanced view. Um, what do I say to that? Anybody who watches This Week in Interview, knows that when it comes to the Skerritt administration and what is good for Dominica, there's no balanced view. But I take your point, and I will try. If you guys know anybody who would be willing to come on the show, I would welcome them because I would like to be able to understand. I would like to be able to understand um, the point of view of someone who can look at what has happened in Dominica in the last 20 years and still support the current administration. I would like to get the point of view, have an honest discussion with someone who can sit and explain to me what they see that has happened in Dominica in the last 20 years that makes them satisfied enough with the performance of the current administration that makes them a supporter of the administration, because that's what it's about. That's what it's about. Um, I I'm getting um, some comments from the audience that they're listening. Do we have an issue with TDN TV or on Facebook? Let me know, guys. Just let me know. I'm getting a WhatsApp um, message saying that there's something going on with the notification. Um, so just let me know if we're having any issues reaching any of the guests. If you're on Facebook, just put a comment in there. Let us know um, if you're having trouble viewing us on Facebook or on tdntv.net. So while I wait for our guests to join, it looks like they're having trouble joining us from Dominica. Um, Clint was backstage. Clint was backstage well before 7, and he's not been able to make it on. Our producers are working with him. So they seem both guests seem to be having trouble. So let's talk a bit about the elections and the appointment to Parliament. Um, there were. Let me see if I can pull up the list of appointed ministers, and we can go through that. And let me see. I'm going to pull up the list of appointed ministers, and that you're going to tell me what you think about the appointments that were made. Um, there are quite a few new members. There are some appointments of folks who were senior and they were in the government, but they did not run in the last election. Like, for example, Mr. Blackmore did not run, but he was appointed. Um, he was appointed back in as a senator, and keeps his portfolio as Minister of National Homeland Security, or whatever it is they call it, in charge of the police and the security of the country. Um, there were so many rumors swirling around prior to the election that that one of the reasons that the prime minister called the snap election is because some of his senior um, officers, some of his senior ministers were not happy with certain things, certain aspects of how the government were run, and there was somewhat of a mutiny, and so he called the election, wasn't go didn't I guess appoint. I don't know how the Labour Party goes around picking their candidates, but he appointed others to work in their to run in their place, and essentially boxing them out of the government. And so, and then there was some of these rumors that they were going in order not to there was some negotiation, but the politics has a lot of negotiation, but there was negotiations going on where he was able to bring them back into the fold, so to speak. And then we see that they are being given ministries. Now, also, when the during the campaign, the prime minister was accusing some of the folks running on the opposition side as they see it as a job. They don't have anything else to do, so they see it as a job to run for election so that they can be parliamentary representative for the area and therefore get a salary. I see Flacco is with us. Flacco, welcome. Um, but when you look at the appointments, it looks like it means that everybody who won essentially got a job. So I'm not sure what the difference would be. But Flacco, it's good to see you. Thanks, man, for coming on. Pleasure to have you.
You're breaking up a bit.
You're not hearing me well?
Okay, I'm picking you up now.
Picking me up? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I was saying, Flacco, welcome. Let me just tell you welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you back.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Yeah, man.
Yeah, certainly. So if you heard me okay, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, all right. So we had you on when you were preparing to run, and now I have you back after the event. So I want to give you some time to just talk about the experience of putting yourself up to run to represent the community of Roseau North. Just go where you want to feel, take 5 minutes or whatever it is, and tell us about your experience in that regard.
Well, it was not something that I had planned, but it was a welcome opportunity going into the different communities and meeting with the people
Mm-hmm.
and getting a first-hand experience of what is basically demanded of um, the folks who put themselves forward to represent the community. And I can tell you, it's not pretty out there. I mean, people of different circumstances have different situations. So we have some people who seem to have the luxury of a choice, and others who really don't. So we look at the challenge of changing the whole political politically divided environment, the whole polarized environment created by the politics.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of dynamics at work, people choosing whichever side that they may choose to support. And I think being involved at that level kind of gives me a better appreciation for the full spectrum of what is going on. Because we have some communities where you have that togetherness, and you have other communities where people are sort of isolated. Um,
So,
you
Flaco,
have yeah.
the communities that were the constituency that you represent was Goodwill, Fokole,
So that it's Mont Daniel, Fonkole,
Fokole.
Parish Pit, Gutter, Pottersville, Santa Roma, and so on.
Okay, so
So I guess you can appreciate that these are um diverse is a diverse range of people from different economic backgrounds and social backgrounds. So
that's why I wanted to go with that because not so the names of the places don't mean the same, but we can say, for example, generally, Mont Daniel and Santa Roma are high-end areas,
yeah,
right on the suburbs of Roseau. Um, more successful businessmen, professionals uh, build and live in those developed areas. And
yeah,
then have um, Parish Spit and Gotha, which were communities that grew up from, if you want to say, from the soil, especially after Hurricane David. Folks went into those areas and took a little plot, build their house, raise their family. You know, regular, hardworking, what they call in America, blue collar people
Yeah.
that have worked for their living day. So you have the, like you said, the demographic covers the full range. So as somebody, I'm sure that in the campaign, right? I'm sure that in the campaign that you had, you were able to look at that at the people in those different communities from a different perspective. I'm guessing. You'll tell me if I'm correct or not. But like having to go and approach these people and talk to them and understand them and get them to understand your message probably changed the way you looked at some of those communities. So some of those can you talk about walking through the communities, what it was like to stop and just talk to people on the street or at their homes, what stood out.
Well, you see, like I was saying, when you're out there trying to get people to, to win them over to your side, you have to almost get into their head and try to understand, okay, what encourages them in a particular direction, or to choose a particular party. Um, and like I was saying before, a lot of people do not have the luxury of a choice. So we might think that that is, everybody have a choice, but that is not so. Especially when you look at the economic circumstances of a lot of people. A lot of the people depend on the government for their employment, for example, which should not be something that would sway you in how you would vote. But people who are basically not necessarily just at the NEP level, but even small business owners who majority of their business comes from the government, they that tends to sway them towards a particular a particular choice. And some of the people who actually do have a choice, who are free to choose, um a few of them were of the opinion that they were abstaining, and that essentially the people choose the people have choose what 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 they themselves would not agree with them. So they would basically say, like, okay, just give him the 21. And my next question would be, okay, but what if the worst comes out of that situation? Do you think the people at the people in the lower socioeconomic brackets would be able to bear that 5 years? Because some people have the opportunity to get up, maybe travel. They have other support systems that they can depend on. So they being able to basically ride out that 5 years is, it's nothing. It's nothing for them. But
Right.
for
But
the people who are at the lower brackets, things going to keep getting harder and harder, and they don't really have a choice but to just, basically, yeah, just
so your experience was that you met a lot of folks who did not feel like the government is working for them.
no, no.
Okay. Um, Let me ask you a question. Now that you've had the experience of running, is that something you would do again?
Oh, definitely. You see, part of what I was saying about my well, if you want to call it a campaign, because I don't see it as a campaign. There was very little time to get anything done. It was basically, like I was saying, me demonstrating the kind of representation that I expect.
Mhm.
Because even though the election has come and gone, all the campaigning has gone on, all the money has been spent, and there are still situations in the community that need urgent attention. And I am just not seeing any mobilization of resources towards addressing those issues. And these are not $1 million issues. These are $30,000 issues that can be solved, you know, within a snap of a finger. I mean,
So you're saying that it's not for lack of resources, it's for lack of what you want to say, caring or intent or
basically, because there was an invitation extended to all independent candidates to come and have this discussion with well, from the pictures I saw, there was the prime minister and the attorney general and so on and so on. And I declined to attend because here I am seeing that for so long you have had the power and the resources to address these small issues, these small inexpensive issues. To me, I consider them inexpensive to the government. When you talk about 30 million, 5 million by there, it's a negligible cost to address some of these small issues. So I'm thinking to myself, what difference will it make if I attend this what I look at basically is just some posturing,
right.
and to me, I every opportunity I get to be on the media or to be interacting with the public, I'm asking the people who have been elected to take up the challenge of addressing these issues, which not just I but the entire community are aware of. You know,
So let's stay there. I'm happy you
yeah,
brought that is one thing I wanted to ask you. As you moved around the community, especially the communities that have great need, right? If you were to sit down with Miss Blanchard,
yeah.
the the young lady who the election results said that she won the election and she's now in government, part of the government. If you had a chance to sit down with her, what are some projects, some of the needs that you would point out to her that needs addressing critically in the communities?
Well, for one, I can tell you community by community.
I would love that. Yeah.
I wouldn't give a whole list of every detail, but at least one project that needs to be addressed in each community. I can start with my community of Mont Daniel. I've
Mhm.
lived here for call it about 30 years, and we have never there have been groups formed towards that objective, but we have no recreational space, no recreational area, and Mont Daniel is a very large community. It's still growing, and there's nowhere where families or young people of Mont Daniel can come together and know each other, have a sports club, play cricket together, play soccer together. There's none of that. So I think anywhere you have what you quote unquote call a community, and really it's just people living in isolation and no real community, we'll never really know what's going on with each other because there is nothing there to bond around. In Fonkole, we have a similar issue with lack of recreational spaces. But one of the things that's standing out to me the most is that the only preschool in that community has been housed in the community center for the past 6 years for lack of a $30,000 roof. They already have a structure. It's there. It's known to the community. All that needs to be done is just to renovate, cover, and get. There's. I've actually spoken to people in the community. There are people with the skill set to do the work from the community itself. So you would be addressing two issues. You would employ some people for the time that the project would be going on, and you would be um, putting an important resource to the community back on its leg. And it doesn't stop there. The benefit doesn't stop there because right now the preschool is housed in the community center, and the
Okay.
entire community is lacking. because the school is housed in the community center, so
So let me understand. The
yeah,
preschool roof for Hurricane Maria.
right.
Hurricane Maria was how many years ago?
5 or 6 years ago.
5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah,
Therefore, the preschool is being held in the community center.
right.
And because of that, the community center cannot be used for the community. By
Exactly.
so it's a double whammy
Actually, on polling day, the entire preschool had to shut down and be, to accommodate the polling.
because the community center was an election, was a polling station.
Yeah,
So
and I mean that to me, that is just embarrassing. On
if
you,
you
you
care,
know where I go in Django.
you if you care, then it's embarrassing. But if you
Of
don't care,
course.
yeah. And for folks that don't know, the prime minister lives in Mondaniel, right?
Yep.
And and so it's his community currently, and you're saying that there are no recreation facilities in Mondaniel. Um,
Well, the people who can afford have their private basketball court and their, but there are working class people, working their 8 to 4 with regular families who, we don't have those facilities. So it would be nice.
would be nice. And not only that, I mean, Mondaniel, Okole, where you're saying that the preschool has no roof.
Yeah.
And it is reported that the prime minister lives in Mondaniel and the state pays rent of $32,000 a month for his so 1 month would cover would provide that cover.
Yeah.
Plus is the cost of additional services. And I saw the prime minister say when folks complain about that exorbitant, extravagant arrangement, he says that they want him to go and live in a banana shed. So 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 that is one Daniel. What did you identify about for Tarish Pit and for water?
Well, Tarish Pit is a community, as you know, they have a very strong fighting spirit. And actually, when I went to Tarish Pit, the guys told me that they didn't want to see any politicians in their community,
Not even you.
not even me, because they said that they have been asking for assistance for the lighting of their playing field in Tarish Pit, which is kept by one of the young men in the community. He's the one who does all of the maintenance. He was actually telling me that he had to source 5 posts on his own, pay for them, erect them, um, raise funds to get the lighting kits.
Light fixture.
So yeah, so they actually have set up their playing field with lights and everything. And whenever they have football in there, it's like it's a spectacle to see, because it's almost like they have their own stadium. It's very humble, but it tells the story of people that have the desire to help themselves, and all we need is proper representation.
It's a little hand. A little
Yeah,
hand.
yeah.
So that's Tarish Pit. Goodwill.
So when we leave Tarish Pit, we can go down. Well, Yampis. There's the abandoned sports complex that the young people have been asking, to either they renovate it or they turn it into like a small business community, so that it could create some opportunity and employment for the younger people trying to do, because it's right next to
State
to
College.
the to the FIFA, the football field.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're having football events right there, it would be a good a good parallel,
Mhm.
to have that small business community there. You can have, that kind of activity right there next to the community, and it's in the vicinity of the state college. There's no lack of innovation from that community.
Right.
Yampis is, there's a lot of tough situations in Yampis, and the people themselves, they show the desire
Yeah, people
and
people
the
with
innovation. So yeah.
resources.
In Gutter village, we have some flood water mitigation that needs to go on there, because whenever you have a heavy rains, um, Gutter is almost like a waterway. So you have sometimes water getting yeah. But that might be a little bit out of my ability,
Mhm.
because that's going to require a lot of maybe earth movement and retaining wall construction and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
engineering.
definitely we would have to have a larger intervention.
Yeah, because they call it gutter, and we understand that that probably is somewhere where
Yeah,
the coming from Center or Upper Goodwill,
yeah.
um, piping through there. So the independent movement is what I call it. I want to move where we had 12 folks stand up, not under a party umbrella. Well, some of them I think were on the TV, right? I think Clint is finally getting to join us right on time. Uh, but I think they said TUD, which is that party that is for like Bruno, uh, that five of the candidates were on the TV, but it seemed like it was sort of like a loose arrangement. Um, but you had that independence.
You're not hearing on that phone. Just tell him.
Didn't think that
Think,
like
just tell him you're not hearing on the
Yeah, I
phone.
think I think is Mike.
yeah. Did we hear in your conversation? So mute your mic a little bit.
You're making no sense. I just
Are
supposed
you
to
fixing
be able to walk through this one.
Clint?
So you want to try it.
Sam, can you mute? Okay. So that independence movement is what I want to see. I'm excited about that. Where you had candidates that went up in defiance of, well, it wasn't so much in defiance, but it was part of the strategizing of preventing the Labour Party from just being an automatic winner of the election without no contest. But at the same time, sort of because the mainstream opposition parties were willing to let that happen. So in that sense, it was in defiance of that. So, and then challenging the status quo. Do you see some kind of like a ember, some kind of like a spark that could really get legs? We saw in the by in Grand Bay, Handbag really generated a lot of interest when he went up as an independent candidate against the Labour Party candidate. None of the other parties contested. In terms of aspirations and possibilities in Dominican political landscape, how do you see that independent if it grows into a movement, what's around that?
I think that is the I think that is really the revolution, that the traditional party politics, you know, it has kind of I'm not going to be I'm going to be so bold to say that, as for myself, party politics has lost, all taste on my palate.
And I think for a lot of Dominicans, from what we see,
Because you see, essentially, the party's objective has become almost the center focus of what where a national objective, where a communal objective should be, we have a party objective. So rather than politics being about the legacy of our communities and our ability to act for our collective benefit, politics has evolved into a group of people acting in concert for the benefit of their party and their interests, and not necessarily the community and the country.
Okay, so let me see if I understand what you're saying and maybe push back a little bit.
Yeah,
What I'm hearing you say is that, okay, there's a party in power and their central focus is to remain in power.
simply,
Sorry. And
simply put,
parties that are not in power and the main objective is to get into power.
very simple,
That's what I understand you saying.
very simple.
Right. But what is missing from that equation is that if you Flacco wants to influence what happens in the country, it's difficult to do it from outside of government. You have maximum bang for your effort if you're part of the government, because then you have the resources of the country at your disposal to support what you need to do. So it's not wrong for the party in power if they feel they do a job to want to remain in power, if they're doing a good job to want to remain in power. And it's not wrong for the party who is not in power to desire to get into power so that what they envisage they can do better, they will have the opportunity to do it better. That is the ideal scenario. Where do you see the departure from that ideal scenario that I just described?
Well, because you see, just look at what happened in Salisbury.
Mhm.
I don't see what happened in Salisbury or in Marigot as any kind of political strategy. I see that as a community deciding what is in their best interest, or what they would, they're taking up their own self-determination and taking decisive action to make that happen. So when you see
So
that is essentially what is lacking. Yeah, go ahead.
why that did not happen in Rosa North?
Well, because you see the prevalence of party politics. People seem to have in their mind that whatever is good for the party is going to be good for the community. And when I see that, when I put that all the variables into that equation and I look at Rosa North, I see that it's not. Because yes, the party wins seats. Yes, the party and that in itself, I think bringing about a further um a further erosion
Mhm.
of what should be the core value. Because yes, we talk about politics as politics is a game and so on, but politics dictates what the policies that govern our life.
Right.
So if we allow the policies within our politics to be solely around a political legacy, or and not really about the progressive development of the people, then I don't see anything good coming from that kind of politics. For
Right.
for example,
Mhm. Go ahead.
if I look at if we're looking at independent candidacy,
Mhm.
if we have no kind of how would I say it, campaign finance reform, or some kind of management, or a cap, a limit on the amount of money spent in elections, then I don't see the use of having independent candidacy on the books, because I don't think anybody can realistically expect as an independent candidate to go up against that kind of political campaigning machinery funded by all this money and expect to win. I had a situation where people were so, people would actually tell me like they would like for me to win, but they know I cannot win,
Mhm.
you know. people were so disenfranchised to the point that people didn't even want to present themselves as an agent just to watch votes being cast. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that, you know, there's a lot to unpack in there, but let's, I think that I did scenario of party. Let's pick another ideal scenario where you have a strong independent movement, and I have some folks who think that independent candidates just confuse the system and confuse themselves and make it easier for the incumbent party to win. But yeah, let's take this last election for example. Let us say independent those five independent candidates come together, discuss what is common in their philosophy, and become a robust opposition to government. Similarly, maybe the next election, 11 win or 12 win, they come together and form the government under some kind of umbrella unity.
yeah.
How do we, how can we, like, from your experience growing up as an independent candidate, do you see a path towards that, or are we doomed to going back and trying to see if we can get a political party strong enough?
Well, I think there's definitely a path, and the path is through the connection to the people.
Mm-hmm.
The people have to be the let's take out the whole thing of political party. If we have somebody going to represent Roseau North, the mandate cannot be coming from, we need a reversal of that. We know what our issues are, so we cannot wait for somebody to come and say, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I make just making promises.
Mm-hmm.
I think the mandate needs to come from the people themselves. Now, we might ask, how are we going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
But the people need to get begin to organize themselves so that we can start to put our issues on the front burner and choose people who we know are competent and who are committed to representing us, to take up that mandate and to present it, to bring it forward. Now, that is the strength I think that independent candidates would have over somebody that is, basically,
Belonging to,
just yeah,
yeah. So you're saying that you, Flacco, okay, you only had 30 days, or less than 30 days, to
yeah,
go to communities and understand what these people need, and let them understand how you would represent them.
yeah,
It is a very short time. Let us say that the next election is 2 years from now. You're saying that if the independent, and by the way, folks, Clint Roll, who went up for Wesley, was supposed to join us. He's having technical issues. Clint, I apologize for that. I will make some space for you in another program shortly, and I will bring you on because I really want that perspective, especially from Wesley, with all of these projects and works and destruction in the environment that's going on, the impact on people's land and their property and all of that. I really wanted to get that perspective. So Clint, we'll work it out where I can bring you back. I can bring you on soon. But again, that brings me exactly to the point I'm making. Somebody like you, somebody like Clint, who had in that quick 30 days to get an understanding and to talk to people. Um, if you're to continue to work and do some organizing, so that if let's say an election is called in 2 years' time, you would have a following, you would have some kind of grassroots uh, impact that could take you to an election to pose a more serious challenge. somebody is saying that I have so much respect for you, young man, Flacco. Keep being you and don't change for no one. Keep pushing on. So you have some, exactly what I'm talking about. Is you have fans, people who see that. And so in 2 years, you know what will happen? One says, I agree with Flacco. Many problems can be resolved with minimal funding, but they all. And so you see that, you know, as I said, that ember that is already starting to spark, and what it needs is just some oxygen to get it into flame. And so Flacco, think for, I mean, what you, nobody knows what's happening next week, but where you sit right now, you think for sure you'll run in the next election?
Once I have the life and the opportunity to, anything is possible.
Like that answer, you know, like that answer.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So,
You see,
mhm,
what I saying is that um we need to get back to that pure sense of representation.
right,
So one of the things that bugging me, like a lot of the communities I go to, we have people in very vulnerable positions. We have a lot of people in vulnerable situations, and we have to understand that anybody that is vulnerable are liable to compromise themselves, their values, their for just to have that whatever they're facing, just to have it resolved, just have to,
it's not
so
children or the others. Yeah.
to me, that is what I see lacking in the party politics. The real concern for people, you know, because okay, just I don't want to be so critical, but just look at a program like the NEP. To me, the NEP can be a good program if it just take a real close look at what going on with the people in there. We need to assess the skills of the people and move them up to the point where they can move out of the NEP program and be gainfully employed and standing on their own two feet. So that way it creates most it creates an opportunity for people that might be coming in at the bottom. You
Right.
know,
Mhm.
not a lot of people think like you can solve problems by just throwing money at it. Just give Mr. $5,000. Just give Mr. that. This that does not solve any of the problems that are there. That a lot of the places I go, when the people when I talk about representing the community, the people basically saying that you know if they give me a salary, they themselves expect a salary. And I mean, it really, in the truest sense, is that if you give me a job to do, I ought to do it well, so that you will be in the position to make money of your own, or to be employed, to be in a better position than I met you. But we have had this complacent attitude of the people who know better, the people that say they want to represent the people, but do not really help the people, but only prey on that. And they prey on that attitude that when the people come, they can just pull out $100 in their pocket, and give this person, and to that person, like you're the savior from heaven, and that need to change. I mean, I don't say that somebody might have an immediate need that you might need, but there must be mechanisms to adequately address people in a way that is sustainable, because just giving people money every time they come to is not really addressing the core of what they may be facing. We need the people in welfare and in this doing the social work to go into those communities, go in there, find out the data on what is going on, if there is nobody employed in the home, if whatever that the people are earning within that household, if it's adequate. And we do not have those discussions, you know
And the other thing about it, Flacco, is the way it's done.
yeah.
So, in other words, we could have a social assistance program that is very transparent,
Yeah.
and run out of whatever ministry that's responsible for it. There are
It
standard
shouldn't even be run out of a ministry because there should be institutions for just that.
institution would be under, when I say ministry, I don't mean party. I mean,
Okay.
you see, we kind of confuse the ministry with the party because that line has been,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You run out of the ministry that's responsible for that. Anybody knows where the form is. I can go get a form and I can fill out a form because I have a need and I submit it and I understand the process by which my request will be approved or disapproved or request for additional information. And it becomes a very transparent and systematized process so that you don't feel like, by I will not get this because this person didn't see me come and vote, or they had a public meeting and I did not attend. So when I come Monday, I come with my hat in my hand and say, Mr. Black, school opening Monday, I need to buy shoes for my children. Can you give me $100? It should never be that kind of a program. And when you do that kind of a program, you really are not helping somebody.
One of the things I was suggesting, Drago, is that whenever people go to apply for assistance from the government, there should be a system that removes the name. I mean, the name will be forever linked to a, a number series,
Mm-hmm.
so you'll have a number for that name. But essentially, when a person applies, their name is taken out of the system and they are identified by a number, basically.
Because Dominica
So
is,
so that makes it anonymous, so that whoever is handling the case from that point, they will not even be able to tell whose case they are working on. They will just be strictly dealing with a protocol and certain measures and so on.
the merit request, the merit.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And and digitized systems as well, because I think that the paper systems, people are using the paper system in 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 negative ways, because
weapon,
it's easy to lose a paper, but when you enter somebody's case or somebody's information on a database with it's yeah, to me that is a more
status of your application, you can do whatever. Yeah,
yeah,
and that would make it more dignified. That would certainly,
definitely.
we're rushing to the end of the hour, folks. We have a second hour of this week in interview. Um, we'll be presenting the book. I don't know if you can see it. It's called The Flying Crapo. This was the first one. Um, this one is the second one. It's a production of TDN Media, where we have a lot of authors. I think we have about 12 different writers who write short stories, taking Dominican folklore and turning it into stories, mixing it to sci-fi, and well done. And so they're launching the second book this evening from 8 p.m. So stay tuned for that. We have some really exciting conversation coming up. But Flacco, I want to give you the last few minutes to close up the discussion. And again, I want to tell Clint I apologize that he couldn't get on, but I will bring him on because I am full 100% behind the independent movement. So I'm going to make this coming year. I'm going to make this platform available because I can see that kind of movement can shake things and have some good results. So I the research that I have available is fully um, in the back of that. But I want to give you the last couple of minutes, Flaco, to just talk to the people. People are listening to you. I'm sure there may be some people you want to say express gratitude to for the short stint, very very short. If you want to say, not even calling it a campaign, but just talk in general. Tell people.
Well, yeah, Tony, first of all, I want to thank you. You've always reached out to me and ensure that I get a chance to share some of my ideas and my thoughts with the listening public. And so there are a few people who may not want to be mentioned, but I still have to extend my gratitude towards them.
They know themselves.
They know themselves, yes. So they have been and still continue to be instrumental because even if the election has come and gone, but some of the projects that I began advocating for, I actually am still pursuing, to have them done. One of them is the preschool in Fonkole that we want to at least to get the roof covered, and we can take the rest from there. I've solicited sponsorship, donations, whatever the public would be able to provide. Um, right now, Alvin Thomas is my 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 collab. If you
Co-conspirator, huh?
Oh yes. So any funds or any donations that you would like to, forward our way, you can do so through Alvin. He will make sure that everything is accounted for. I hoping that I can find some way to make some of the progress on the projects that we're doing, make them public so that people can see, what their contributions are doing. But yes, it's all about representation, and I think we talk about oh, politics is this dirty game, and so, but we are the ones who define what our politics is. I can remember I was in Cassie Bruce, your hometown, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
I was there sometime after they had some massive flooding just recently, and I was down there right after the roads got cleared, and speaking with the guys, and they were saying, um, expressing some of their disappointment in the way that the government responded to the situation. And I was telling them that if they cannot find the representation that they want, they themselves have to take up that mantle. And I know Kello, the Jelly Man, as everybody know him, is one of the people who has been advocating for Cassie Bruce community. Because when we had the deplorable road conditions, because I do farming down at Cassie Bruce, when I have to traverse there now and then, I know the roads are really bad, and he was the only one who got the people together and challenged the Gadagan company to address the road conditions because it was really bad. So I was saying to these guys that they shouldn't wait. We should not wait in any community for the government to do anything for us. I was saying to them that if as a farming community, I sure we can gather about 50 shovels or 50, 100 spades. And by the time the we had the situation, there should have been 100 guys down there, everybody with a shovel in hand. You
Right.
know, we would put that on live. You know, and I'm sure that would elicit us a response from the people who should have been there with the heavy equipment and so on, to deal with the issues. So we must never put ourselves in the position of being powerless or helpless, and that is what I want to,
Can do.
yeah, I want to drive that message home to every single community. Party politics is not going to solve our problems. We need to find people with the desire and the committed desire to address those things. We have
Right.
to find the courage to do that. Yeah.
Taco, thank you as usual, and not just from me, from the comments that we get in. Flacco is on point. There's a different system and a government handout program based on political affiliation.
And before I go, Tony, I want to encourage every independent candidate who was vying for that position of representative to keep the people who have been elected, keep them on keep the fire to their feet to
Mhm.
deliver for your communities, because I am determined to do that for my end.
And before you go, is there any for you guys to come together? I know
Oh,
some
definitely, definitely,
you guys,
definitely,
should really come together and support each other.
definitely.
All right. Well, Flaco, thank you so much. I have the second hour pressing in at me. I mean, conversation is always too short.
You're welcome, Tony.
But
Always a pleasure.
wish you all the best and congratulations on the run. You know,
Thanks.
run in Chicago the first time, he did not even, you know, and see where he ended up. So this one was a test run.
Great,
We look
great.
forward to much better and greater things. All right.
Yeah, man.
All right. Thanks. So listeners, there you have it. Unfortunately, Clint could not connect. Clint Rowe, the independent candidate in the Wesley constituency, he could not successfully connect, but I'll bring him on because, you know, this actually first all came about because someone called me and recommended that I bring Clint on. And unfortunately, Clint could not come on. So apologies for that, but we'll make up for it. We'll make up for it. We also reached out to the panel rep for Salisbury, but she was previously committed. So we'll bring her on as well. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with the opposition, who's going to be leader of the opposition, who are going to be the opposition senators, what is the stance that's going to be, what's the dynamic going to be between the traditional opposition parties and the candidates who won on the opposite side. Very interesting scenarios to play with. We haven't done an election analysis. Somebody was commenting to me that the turnout was so low, but some of the numbers look healthier than you would expect for the low turnout. So those statisticians out there, those guys who like numbers, can you take that up, run with that, contact me, let's have a discussion around that. But as I was telling you folks, see this book? It's called The Flying Crapo. Flying Crapo. That's what we're going to be talking about now. We take a quick break, and when I come back, I'm going to be joined by some of the writers and the producers. I say it's a TDN production, but it's really a group of writers that call themselves Piton Noir. It's just a lot of them are part of the TDN family, so I like to associate with success, and I'm calling it a TDN initiative. But the first one come out a few years ago. If you're a long-time listener, you remember this is 1 and this is 2. And all of our stories about Sukuya and Laja Bless and all those kind of things have been taken and fantasized, and you know, the result is tremendous. We telling our stories. All right. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up in the next hour. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere unless if you're just going to get a glass of water or something to drink, and come right back. And I'll be right here. We'll be on soon.
Presented by.
If you live in Canada, the US, and the UK and are looking for Dominica products including cocoa sticks, bay rum, coffee, soaps, crafts, and other popular Dominica items, then look no further. You can now shop on BuyDominicaOnline.com, a secure, easy-to-navigate website selling a wide variety of Dominica-made and Dominica-inspired products. When you shop on BuyDominicaOnline.com, you are helping to grow Dominica's economy. Go to BuyDominicaOnline.com and enjoy home away from home.
People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
You're muted, bro. You're muted, Anthony. And we can't hear you. Cannot hear you. Bro, we cannot hear you. Anthony, we can't hear you. Cannot hear you. All right, guys. Sharon, good evening.
Hi, Chris.
Why you guys? Yeah, hello. Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize I was talking to myself. They said, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it, did it make a sound?
You're going to have to ask that question to the sci-fi writers.
My grandfather always told me to talk to the most intelligent person in the room. And if that's you, man, that's what you do.
Welcome, gentleman and lady. Sharon, haven't seen you in a minute. But I know you tune in all the time. I hope everything's been well with you. And
always, yeah, I was listening to you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm
So
always
welcome.
there. It's not the radio.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm going to just jump right in and have my guests. Sam, we're not live yet. Yeah, we are live, right? Or you're not a producer on this part. You're actually a guest.
Yeah, I am.
As normally is a producer, and he goes into the back of the program starts. But I was telling the audience about the Flying Crapo, the sequel.
Anthony, we seem to be having a little issue with your audio.
Let me connect the headphone.
Yeah,
and see.
it gets kind of choppy sometimes.
I hope this is better.
Much better. Okay. Thank you.
All right, great. No, I was telling the audience before that tonight we're going to be talking about the Flying Crapo. And for those who are not from Dominica, our national dish is called the mountain chicken. It's really a frog that in Creole we call crapo. Crapo is the name of our frog. It is actually a delicacy. If you ever had it, it tastes like chicken. It tastes like a real, the parts are much smaller, so you think it's a malnourished chicken you're eating, but it does taste like chicken. And so that's where the word crapo comes from, I'm pretty sure. I am going to let you guys introduce yourselves one after the other. We'll start with the lady, because ladies first. So go ahead, Sharon.
Hello, I'm Miss Sharon. I'm from village of Coliho. I've been writing for a number of years now, and with Peter Noir for a number of years. I'm also in this first and second book that we're going to discuss tonight. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Awesome. I'm so excited about the conversation. Next. Sam, you'll go last.
Yeah, Chris.
Chris, go ahead.
My name is Christopher Noseworthy. I was the editor for the stories in both editions of the Flying Crapo, and I worked with the writers to develop their stories for publication.
All right. Welcome, Chris. Sam?
Well, by now, most of you, if you're a TDN fan, you know the voice at least. My name is Sam Judge. I am Sharon is my senior as a writer, so I kind of take points from her. So, and I have contributed to both editions of the Flying Crapo. And on the second one, I did the book design and the cover and the inside.
The cover and the inside. Who's going to take a stab at telling the audience what is Piton Noir?
I can do that. So Piton Noir is a group of writers. The group was first conceptualized and developed by Nicole Judges, Lionel Levy, and Ron D. May his soul rest in peace. And there are a few other folks which I can't remember all the names, but those are the key players who started the Piton Noir writing group. At first, they basically created it to just publish things like poems and things like that on Facebook. But it later grew into something much bigger, which turned into uh, on the Flying Crapo, it says it's written by or published by the TFC Collective, but it's really a Piton Noir publication. And so this is where we are now talking about both editions, or rather the newest edition of the Flying Crapo, or the Flying Crapo from folklore to the future.
From folklore to the future. I'm going to read what's on the back of the first one. It says, a boy terrified to fetch water from a nearby spring. A man on a remote mountain track suddenly realizes he is not alone. A girl receives homework help from an apparition. A teacher struggles to discern the truth behind a village folklore. A young woman is haunted by a creature of native legend. A boy discovers his latent genetic gift. These are the stories of the Flying Crapo, a collection of folklore, fantasy, and more from writers of the Commonwealth of Dominica, West Indies. I think that gives you a good gist of the genre that we're dealing with. And on the back of this current sequel that we had to launch tonight, it says, "Welcome to the Flying Crapo, from folklore to the future." In this sequel to the Flying Crapo, you will read brand new stories with unique ideas from both returning and new authors. This collection of short stories by writers and friends of the Commonwealth of Dominica will tantalize and challenge your perceptions. Folklore, fantasy, and science fiction will collide and fuse to create a distinct Caribbean voice. We encourage you, dear reader, to explore these strange yet familiar new worlds and immerse yourself in the adventures of the Flying Crapo, from folklore to the future. So, folks, you get an idea of what it is, and we are approaching Christmas season, and you're looking for ideas to give to folks, your young people, older folks. I suggest that you get both copies of the Flying Crapo. They are available on Amazon, and they will make tremendous gifts after you've eaten your Christmas dinner and you need to laze. It will make interesting reading, or it might scare you and you might have a little nightmare once you doze off and fall asleep. One of those things. But I really encourage you to go to Amazon and get it. In the Caribbean, we have a real tradition of storytelling, and before there were all of these electronic gadgets that distracted us. So, for example, I grew up in Castle Bruce and we had no electricity. I left to go to university before my village got electricity. So on a moonlight night, we would gather and tell stories, and folks would try to scare us, and that is where that tradition comes from. You would be sometimes the only place that has light is at the shop, and so you go to the shop and you hang out, and the older men are there, and they're playing dominoes and they're drinking rum, and they see you as a young boy, young child there. They try to scare you, and they tell you some story about when they went someplace and some spirit tried to kidnap them, and that sort of thing. And so I like this project because it captures that, and it stores it for posterity. Chris, with that background, I'm going to come to you because you are the editor, and you edited the first book, and now the second book. Do you get that? Do you get that sense, that spirit of that storytelling, that fantasy slash supernatural type of storytelling that is common in places like where we come from?
Absolutely. One of the things that struck me the most about these stories is that I felt that they'd all been told in front of a fire at some point. And I tried very hard not to impose my own ideas of what the stories should look like and what narrative structure I thought should be there. I wanted to preserve that because I felt that's what makes them unique and what makes them special. And but I could definitely see the folkloric origins of most of these ideas, and I just thought it was brilliant the way that I was often transported into the jungle of Dominica to experience these terrifying screams and razor grass and all that fun stuff. So it was, and I think I had a unique perspective on it because I read so many of the stories, and I got to experience the same reality told in different ways. So the same folklore of the island, if we picture the folklore as an object like a diamond, I got to see it from all the different facets that my writers would be able to communicate through. So it was a pleasure.
Yes, and storytelling is such a oral storytelling is such an integral part of where we came from, because of the origin of our communities in the Caribbean. Reading and writing was not encouraged, and so oral storytelling became a huge part of how we passed on stories, how we passed on our traditions, and how we shared moments with folks from different parts of Africa who found themselves on the same plantation, different folks from who have different experiences in this new part of the world, and so that storytelling is really key. If you're familiar with calypso music came out of that storytelling type of because a lot of the time drums were involved in telling stories, and so all calypsos. I remember when I came to college in the US in '87, and when we would have parties, a lot of my American friends would say, "But this song is about something serious. It's some serious social issue. How comes you guys are dancing and partying to a political song?" You know. But that is just part of who we are. We put that into song because a lot of times that's the only avenue that was available to tell and to voice your opinions. And so, Sharon, I've read a lot of your writing, both your poems and your stories, and so on. But this is a little bit different. What is the experience like participating in? I'm going to call it a project. Participating in such a writing project.
Well, this second book, it was a challenge because the editor I had to rewrite a couple times, and it's at at the end, he reread and say, let's give that story another time. I wrote, I think, 4 or 5 stories I sent to him. I couldn't make. And then he's like, as if I didn't understand what they want. Like my mind go different path. And finally he accepted. I'm like, yeah, I got what they want. I think I got what they want. This one, this story, Songs for the Sea, is there's a lot of truth in it. Because if you guys remember, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the mermaid. They said I was in Portsmouth. So I grew up hearing about her. And I believe, like, by the sunken ship, she would always used to come, and they said she would come and she would seduce the young man. And so that's basically where it comes from. My dad is one told me about that. So it was really an interesting product. It's good. It's good for our minds. Like, it really, and he is honest. The editor, like the way he really pushes us to be the best. Like, we can't just send any old thing out there, and that is very, very, very like stimulating for me especially.
Yeah, so that talks about the quality. That's such a good point. So it's not just people who just send stories and we put it together and collate it and make a book out of it. I hear stories about Chris being a toughie. but I guess it's the standard you're trying to maintain, Chris. You had your own idea of what it should be.
When we launched the idea of doing a second edition, I talked to Nicole Georges and I said, I really want to be an incubator and no matter what quality or where you are in your writing career, there's always something that you can learn from others. And I really wanted to build on the collective aspect of the project. And so we built in workshops into our timeline so that we get together and discuss different stories that we'd read. We talked about world building, we talked about structure, we talked about dialogue and all of those pieces, just so that we could get somebody else's perspective and be able to apply that to our own writing. And once I got the initial drafts, everybody went through at least 2 drafts with their story. Most went through more. So yeah, I'm sure Sharon got frustrated with me once or twice. That's entirely fair. That was my job. But I knew she had it in her, and I have to say I was extremely pleased with the final product. But I know how much work that was for her to do. And I'm very proud of the quality of the collection that we put out. You can see the love for the island in the writing. You can see the development in the storytelling craft. And that basis will be important for continuing on the legacy of storytelling in your community. And if I could facilitate that in any way, I was very happy to do that.
And the blessing is that you're not part of the Dominican culture, so to speak, although after this second project, you probably feel like you are. But so it's fresh eyes. So somebody like me would probably get emotionally attached to the mermaid story because I grew up here in the mermaid story. You go to the river and you would be looking for the mermaid in the basin, and so on. And so maybe I'll be reading that and getting excited rather than being able to look at the technical part of the writing and the structure and all of that. And so I think it's brilliant that this project has you, someone like you, as the editor, because you can focus on what is required without getting the emotional and nostalgic interference, so to speak.
No, not interference. That's the spice of it all, man. That's what you want. I was lucky enough to. I've been friends with Nicole Georges for a while now. We went to university together, and she was my cultural translator. So there were often times I would be on the phone or texting and going, "Why are they doing this? I don't understand. Can you explain this to me? Is this a poorly written sentence, or is this actually how things happened?" And I was able to get that cultural knowledge from her. So her contribution was invaluable. And I would often be able to bounce ideas off of her or Sam as we were going along. And and then we were doing this over the pandemic as well, so it was a stressful time for everybody. And so the fact that we were able to finally get this out was astounding.
Awesome. Sam, you and Nicole, co-conspirators on so many of these.
Yeah, the troublemakers, right?
Yeah. But people love the work that comes out of your collaboration with Nicole. So big shout out to Nicole. We at TDN we love you. But what does it mean to you to see not only that you're able to produce one, but two such books?
For me personally, it's an accomplishment. I have been writing for a long time, and either scrap everything I wrote and start all over again. And Chris actually gave me some very good advice while we were working on this one, because I'm working on something else, and he said, "Well, do it the way you do it for this one," But to me, it's a reminder of where I came from. I remember when we were growing up, from my grandparents to my dad, we would always, as we talked about earlier, talking about the stories that we grew up with, especially before we got electricity on the countryside. Some scary, some more funny, and I think, but that's our oral tradition. And what I found is that a lot of our writings are not non-fiction, and either non-fiction or poetic, put it this way. So we do not have a lot of our science fiction stories written down. They have to be passed down from generation to generation, which has not been happening for a very long time, I'm sure. So some of these stories are lost. I can't even remember some of them. So it's important for me, this project is important in that way for me. So we get the opportunity to write down some of the stories. And some of these stories they're not a retelling, I should say, of what we heard growing up. They are our own versions of what we heard growing up. The stories of Laja Bless and people getting agaway, or being lost, being found, made to be lost by a witch, or that kind of thing, a beautiful woman, all of that stuff. I think, though, in the first book we have more of those type of stories. In the second book we have a few, but the stories are more sci-fi focused, or I would say modern day sci-fi storytelling focused, because that's kind of what we decided we wanted to do for this particular edition. We wanted to blend both the folklore and, I would say, North American sci-fi stories. And so,
do you have a sample of what?
Well, actually, we have several samples that we are going to share with you guys tonight.
Awesome.
We get a chance to play.
I think now would be a good time, because I hear you say sci-fi, and I'm saying Dominican stories, sci-fi. How does those two things come in? And so, if you can play something that would sort of illustrate that, that would be tremendous.
Definitely. Well, let me say this.
Mm-hmm.
I believe our stories about witches and Lugau and all of those things, I believe those are actually sci-fi stories. We simply call it differently, because everyone is familiar with Marvel. Let me use Nicole's example. Doctor Strange, he's a witch, right? But he's a magician, if you want to put it that way. But they expand the story, not just simply saying, "Oh well, this guy is a magician, or he's some kind of witch. He has all this power, and he can do all this evil." But instead of doing evil, he's a hero, a good guy. I think our stories we can use our stories to do the same things. We have never really expanded on them, because every time you hear a story about a witch, at least in Dominica, it's a bad witch. It's somebody who is looking to do harm, suck your child blood or steal your hair or whatever the case may be. But I think we can expand on those kinds of stories, make some of them into heroes, some villains, some heroes. And so I think the Flying Crapo is the perfect place to do that, or to cultivate that attitude towards our folklore.
So you're going to you have a
When
sample
you're ready.
queued up? I'm ready.
All
I'm
right.
more than
So,
ready. I cannot wait.
all right. So we have several. So, but the one I want to play first is the man Erwin Mitchell wrote a story called "The Vanishing Goat." I'm going to play that one first, and Erwin was kind enough to do a video. So we're going to go to that one, and then I'll give you one that's closest to the sci-fi.
Okay.
Stay right there.
Hello everyone, my name is Erwin Mitchell. I am a writer and a member of Peter Noir Writers. Today I'm going to read an excerpt from my story, The Vanishing Goat, which was published in Peter Noir's collective, The Flying Crapo 2. That same night, the dynamic duo Joe and Julie set off on their secret mission. He brought along his flashlight and his rusted old pellet gun. Joel packed a basket with enough food to feed 3 grown men for 3 days. "You have a spot in mind, no, Joe?" she asked as she followed closely behind him. "Well, it have a spot next to the tamarind tree. It's there I just take my little nap sometimes," he said. They continued down the trail till they got to the selected location. They waited through the entire night, taking turns to rest, but nothing unusual happened. At dawn, the farm animals awoke to a new day. As they began to graze peacefully, the exhausted couple went back up to the house to rest. Since nothing odd happened for some days after their stakeout, they felt that their presence had scared off the snatcher. But exactly a week later, Joe noticed that one of his biggest rams had gone missing. The couple searched the entire farm, but there was no sign of the goat. From then on, they also kept a watchful eye during the day for suspicious activity or persons. Night after night, they hid in the same spot in hopes of getting answers, but the animals continued to disappear. Although not a strong believer in local spirits and folklore, Joe began to ponder a new suspicion. "Boy, I suspect it's a Sukuya that taking the goats at night," he said to his wife. "Awa, Joe," she replied. "A Sukuya would suck them and make them sick, but not take them away." "But what again, na Julie?" he replied. 10 goats will remain out of almost 100. She shook her head in bewilderment. "Well, whatever it is, I will get a special medicine for it, Joe continued. Joe said that he intended to consult a local Gadizafe, a witch doctor who dealt in Obia and could tell him why his animals were disappearing. Equally frustrated, his wife agreed to accompany him on this journey. You could purchase The Flying Crapo 2 on Amazon to enjoy the rest of this amazing story. Thanks for listening.
The Day Them Come by Nicole Bennett. We had 3 more minutes to go in the match when the playing field suddenly get kind of dark. I was running for the goal with sweet victory all in my mind in a perfect dance with the ball when some coward just grabbed my shirt and threw me off balance. Guys, I was so vexed, man. I turned and I was ready to hit Mr. Alash, and then I realized it's one of my own teammates that do me that way. "What happened to you now? You don't say I was going to score." I shouted at him, but he just grabbed me up by my collar and he pushed my head up for me to watch up in the sky. Boy, gas, when I see what that up there, my legs just start to shake one time. "Boy, what is that? A UFO?" somebody say. I heard them man laugh kind of nervous, but I check in, is that self it is. I mean, the thing was big, like a metal hubcap just hanging over our head. And it was so big, it put the whole village in shadowy. All 4 streets and the playing field. And I check in, it quiet now. Not even a bird chip you can hear. My head start to grow and my skin just break out in goosebumps. "Who in the match?" All of us frightened when we heard the shout from the stands, and we turned to see who is that idiot worrying about football match at a time like that. Man, I forget all about old man Casino. Casino come to every match we have, even practice. because he does place bet. And he mostly blind. So now he probably checking why he play so quiet and he not here in the match play. I wanted to laugh, but for real frightened. I didn't even know what to do next. My best friend Rocks jog up to the stand to casino and all of us just follow like we was playing freeze and now we on stick. And when I get close, I hear Rocks tell Casino how it have some kind of spaceship floating over the field and the match kibosh. Well, boy, Casino don't take that well now. I bet $20 on this game, or you better finish this game or somebody better give me my money. Casino start to yell and get on so bad. He half drunk too. And the boys from the next team who come to play us, they start acting like, oh, they so brave and they vex all of a sudden and they want to keep playing to see who win. Well, I see them watching up in the sky and I know they're well afraid too. I tell them, fellas, let's just call it a draw and we better head home because me myself not taking no chance because it's probably missile or acid rain or whatever that coming down next. Then fellas start.
All right. We have more clips, but we will get to them. You're muted again. Your audio is not there.
Yeah, but I'm still hearing Nicole reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, though.
That. Huh?
Because if you are listening in live, you're gonna hear the delay.
Okay. No. I'm listening to the call, but anyway, so two very different types of stories. Folks, I don't know how you're going to resist buying the this book. You know, you want to hear what happened with the match, and you also want to hear what happens with the goat.
Yeah.
The goat that is disappearing. I don't know if you have the story. I haven't read the book. The lady that went to there's one of our stories where a Sukuya use a broomstick and fly all the way to England and steal a dress from the Queen and come to church on Sunday morning in the dress. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite stories that would qualify for sci-fi. And she sit down in the audience dazzling the priest and everybody wondering about who have that dress in them that dazzling everybody. Anyhow, so folks, you like audio. I guess people are reading the book, so it's going to be the audio version is going to be available.
We will do an audio version, yes, but we have to finish the audio version for the first one first.
Okay.
We still have a few stories which haven't been recorded. Once we have that, we will publish that. It'll be available on audiobook, on Audible, I should say.
On Audible.
But you said that the two stories that we played the clippings of are two very different stories, and they are. Just imagine a UFO lands on Earth and it appears in a village or in a city in Dominica. And Nicole wrote it that way on purpose, the way she was reading it. She wrote it that way on purpose to capture the colloquial language and mannerisms and attitude of the folks. What would Dominicans do, especially if a UFO lands over a playing field in the middle of a football match? What would we do? So just picture that. And so this is the reason. So some of the stories will be original. They have no real context or tie to a witch story from back in the day. However, they're talking about things that, what if this happened in Dominica? I mean, you can imagine it happening in North America because that's all over TV, that's all over publishing and everything, comic books and so forth. But imagine that happening on a Caribbean island. And I say Dominica, but I really should say the Caribbean because Peter Noir involves people from other Caribbean islands as well, and we're welcoming everyone actually, especially if you have a Caribbean background, or if you are some kind of tie to the Caribbean. Chris is our editor, but he didn't tell you much about his contribution, to the Flying Crapo. He kept that secret. Chris is actually also a contributor
Right.
He has one story in each of the editions, and they are very. If you didn't know, you would say this must have been written by a Dominican. The
Right.
story is so down to earth and such a powerful story. In fact, I told him before that I'm waiting for more of on his particular. I want to see how his characters where they go from where they left off. So
Well, one of my purposes tonight is to encourage folks to get their copy of the book, and it's Christmas season. I'm encouraging you to get a copy of the book, and for yourself, and as a gift. A very simple but very effective gift idea. And I, I like the fact that Chris is here because I want to encourage you, especially to buy the book for your non-Caribbean friends.
yes.
Absolutely. I mean, I really appreciate the kind words that Sam has for my writing. I did set foot on the island for one day a couple of years ago, and I don't know if that qualifies as enough time, but it definitely wasn't when I was there. But it gave me, in a way, it felt like a coming home. I had been party to so many of Nicole's stories over the years that it felt like going into a familiar space. And one of the things that I encouraged the writers to do this time was explore the use of dialect. And I think the clips that Sam played really demonstrated that well. Irwin captured the flavor of the language of the people in his story, and Nicole did the same thing. And it's I think that's really important to capture and to write down, because that's the sort of thing that changes over time. That's the sort of thing that can evolve and get lost. And I think this collection has a lot of importance. Also it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun stuff going on in these stories. There's romance, and there's violence, and there's street battles, and there's alien invaders. But what it does is it captures the flavor of the different communities around Dominica. And in my stories, I'm very aware that I was not Dominican. So I took the perspective of somebody coming to the island from the outside and looking through that lens, and how somebody who wasn't born there might view the whatever's going on in his life on the island. So,
and it worked well. It worked
Yeah.
very well.
And the thing about, if you say you were there for a day, I'm guessing you came on a ship, like a cruise ship or something, right?
No, we were in Guadeloupe, and we took the ferry over, and oh my, that was an experience.
Yeah. So you came by ferry, because what I was going to say is, the best way to experience Dominica is to approach it from the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you come in and you see the mountains and the ruggedness of the island, they have this story that says that when Columbus went back to Spain to report what Dominica looked like, he took a piece of paper, crumbled it, and tossed it on the table and said that's what Dominica looked like. Just valleys and stuff. And then when you come on ashore and you meet the people of Dominica, it's a whole other experience meeting our people. So I'm looking forward to reading your stories, Chris, because I want to get that sense of perspective. Sharon, different, although our stories have common threads, and also when they started having national storytelling competition, other parts start hearing stories from how they tell it in different areas. As part of this project, and you get to see stories from people from different parts of Dominica, and as a writer yourself, did you get that sense that although there was some kind of common thread, there was diverse interpretation from folks depending on where they came from in Dominica?
Yes, I get that a lot from Sam's writing. The whole project, it's like I'm in a school and I'm learning. When I read in the second one about Agatha Castle, I'm like, what? When I go to Dominica, I have to go and find that castle because I don't know about the history. And that's what I like about Peter Noir, that they tie our historical background and bring it to the future. like I'm listening to Fontaine's book launch this morning, and when he talk about the future, I was like, you know what, perfect, and it nicely. When I read Sam's work, he talk about his daughter. He's a seasoned writer. He knows his stuff, and for some reason, he say
Sharon,
he
you're breaking
Dominica.
up a bit.
But Dominica is like he is Dominica. He knows the history. He ties the story so nice. So like from different villages, I can see a big difference because like I'm learning. Every story is for me. Right in school, if you want to say that.
I have a couple customer stories that I need to. Maybe I should participate in the next book.
Well, we always looking for writers, for
Ah,
Peter Noir.
you,
So the next volume is we'll be waiting for writers too. We
you
already
know
have
there
at least one new. So
there was a time in Castlebrooks where everybody used to go in at 6 o'clock before it get dark because there was a ghost. There was a ghost in the village,
yeah.
and everybody would go in at 6 o'clock until they found out that it was some of the young men that were running around the village dragging empty cans behind them. So everybody would go in early, and then they could go to people's farms to steal their produce. And there was genuine terror. There was genuine terror in the
Yeah.
village that there was a
In
ghost.
Koyo, during the Ninja Turtle series, when it first came out, they said that they would take us. So you wouldn't see no little kid around the little coins because Ninja Turtle would take us. Don't know if
Yeah,
that's like add any significance to it, but what you're
Yeah.
saying.
yeah. There was a ghost, and as a matter of fact, um, they named the ghost Chucky because it's around that time. It's around that
Jockey,
time. The child's story,
Child's Play, yes.
Chucky, Child's Play was on television, and so
Yeah.
they named the ghost Chucky. But
Head dogs
again,
because
it shows how our cultures get intermingled, intertwined, which highlights what all three of you says, that not only are this project intended for entertainment and for fun, but it also captures that moment before it's lost. Before it gets, I don't want to use the word contaminated, but before it gets cross-pollinated um, between cultures, and it transitions and changes too much. The art of writing and plays and all that captures that. And so again, folks, I encourage you to, I know it sounds like a sales pitch, and it is, but I'm saying that every time I have a book featured, I always say that get the book, because your kids will read it. It will help to help them to understand where they came from, and it's also a good conversation starter. It makes a tremendous gift. It's tremendous reading when you're on vacation, when you have some downtime. So get the book. Some in the first book we had some young writers.
Yes.
Do we have the same thing in this book?
No, we did not. None of our young writers returned. In fact,
Mhm.
one specifically told me, "I am too busy." I can say it. My son, he told me he is too busy. He said that I am too busy because this is his senior year in high school. So
We understand that.
yeah, I digress. But we didn't have any young writers this time. Some of our writers who would have returned couldn't for various reasons, but they promised to come back for the third one. But I think we still had a good group of writers. 12 authors offered this volume. Um, and as Chris said from the very beginning, everyone worked really hard, and the these workshops that we did over the summer, and some over the pandemic, those were tremendous help, helping us to uh, focus on story structure, world development, world building rather.
yes.
Those workshops they were very important, and I do hope that we get to do some more before we begin working on the third volume, which I don't know when we're gonna yet, but We have to try to sell some of these.
One thing at a time, yeah.
Yeah,
I think one of the joys that I got working on this project is I'm from Canada, and I think as neighbors to the largest English-speaking market in the world, I think we have a certain obligation to stick together and support one another to get our voices out there. I mean, ours is a little bit bigger than yours, but we all feel drowned out by American cultural touchstones, and I think it's really important to highlight those that are not, and how different they are and how wonderful they are, and the sense of magic in the writing that I was able to read and work with was new to me, and I really grew from that. And I think that's something that everyone who reads these stories can pull from, that is that just sense of wonder and magic in everyday life.
Yeah, and I must add too that we talked about the sci-fi aspects of the stories, but we didn't talk about the mysterious aspects of some of the stories and the extremely funny aspects of some of the stories. Like Nicole's story, for example. When I read this, I had to put my head on my desk several times because I couldn't stop laughing. I just couldn't stop laughing and still get the seriousness of what would happen if something like this occurred. And then we have a story about considering what if there was a research laboratory somewhere in Dominica and some kids found themselves there disobeying a long time order saying do not go to that place, and they went anyway for whatever reason, and they found themselves basically kidnapped and probed and all kinds of things happen, and then they don't know what happened to them. So there are several different stories. One of the stories which I found to be very interesting is a story talks about witchcraft, but it also talks about forgiveness, marrying the two things. So I should say they have very different things in the stories for everybody. So pick up a copy for yourself, and your friends, family, loved ones, even people you do not like, send one to them because you might scare them.
No, but you know that part about in our stories growing up, there usually was a lesson.
Yeah.
Or some kind of thing. They'll say, okay, and that is why rabbits have short tail, because in the story the tail got beat off or burnt off or something. And so that is a very strong part of that heritage, where we tell stories. Lessons are taught through storytelling. Chris, you grew up in Canada, and so maybe by the time you were growing up, technology had already progressed so much that maybe your storytelling, I don't know. That's what I want to ask you. Do you have similar childhood experiences of storytelling in that kind of a folklorish type of way?
Not as much. My family is originally from Newfoundland, so they have a much stronger storytelling tradition in Newfoundland for many of the same reasons that Dominica has its strong tradition. We were actually part of the same trade route cycle back in the day, and so my family has that tradition, but I grew up in central Canada and in Manitoba, so I wasn't surrounded by it as much. So yeah, I was sort of kid of the 80s and 90s. We got a lot more popular media and a lot more cartoons, so we lost a little bit of that, I think.
Okay, so that highlights how much we have to cherish and how important this project is, because technology is pervasive. And for example, Sam will say his son participated in the first one, but life took over in the second one, because there's just so much homework and so much school activities that the story, the time you would tell that, the time that our parents would use to tell us stories, they're helping us to do homework. And so that has stolen that away. And so the project of Peter Noir and the Flying Crapo captures that. and saves it for posterity. And therefore your kids who make it to Dominica once a year, once every 3 years for a couple of weeks in the summer, can have readings, and then they can come and talk to you about some of those stories and ask you if you really believe that when you were young. Do you have experience with that? It's really can create a teaching moment where you can help your kids to understand where you came from, understand how you grew up, and therefore um, have a better understanding of where you're coming from when you say certain things to them or you take certain positions on certain things. Um, I cannot believe that we are flat out at the end of the hour. But what I'm going to do is, I see Sam has
Yeah,
more to
there.
add, but I'm going to go around for each one of you guys to add to what we've already said. So Sam, go ahead.
Well, there are a couple of things that I need to do before we go.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to play a couple more clips, but before I do that, I just want to say this. Someone asked, "Why a frog as your mascot?" Essentially, what does it that have to do? And I think someone else said, "Well, I opened the book and there's no stories about the frog," but that's not the point. Essentially, the flying crapper is what we call a tongue-in-cheek tribute to Dominica's uh, uh, national dish or former national dish.
Former.
Be- yeah, because this frog was hunted on almost to extinction,
Okay.
and a few years ago that the government did put a ban on hunting it. They kind of changed the national dish to saltfish and other things. But so this is kind of a tribute to the mountain chicken, which by the way is making a comeback. And it's because a moratorium was put on hunting them. So this is the reason for the frog. And as you see, the guy is well armed, so he's not your average frog. Again, thanks to Ron D for designing this. And you see the cover you have for the first one, that was supposed to be the original cover. But unfortunately, we didn't finish it in time. But while we were working on this one, we finished the other one, and so that's why they both have the correct cover now.
Mm-hmm.
But so yes, so this is the purpose and the reason for the flying crapple, and it's kind of like an impossibility, you know. How do you how do you how does a frog fly?
But you never went frog hunting.
Well, what I mean is it can jump, which can seem like flying, but
Seems like
how
they
do you?
fly.
Yeah, right. So that's the whole point
Mhm.
of it. It's not meant to be taken seriously, I
Speak,
guess.
Speaking about the progression, the cover on the first one shows the frog in the rainforest,
Exactly.
and this second one shows the frog basically catching a ride on the moon. What's the
Jumping over the
significance
moon.
of that, or jumping over the moon, whichever
Well,
one
that's
of
the
them?
significance right there. It was in the jungle. It was in the rainforest. It was struggling, but the idea that's why it's armed because he is basically gonna seek his vengeance. Essentially,
Mm.
at some point, you will hear this. You will see the story as to what
So
he is
the
actually doing.
frog discovered the lab, the research lab that you were talking about, and got some serum or something, right?
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, so it's really about reminding us, all of us actually, of who we are, you know, and not getting our story, making sure our stories do not get lost. Because as Chris was saying, that he's from where he grew up, those stories are lost, and we do not want that. And the oral tradition is doesn't seem to be as powerful as it used to be. And
Yes,
so this
certainly.
is the perfect transition into the century that we are living to write them down. And I believe books will be around for a very long time. As long as man is around, books will be around.
Definitely. So you
And
said you had a couple of clips to
yes,
run?
I do want to play these two clips. And then we will go. This one from Christine Simelda, another contributor, and then I'll give you one from Delia.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Christine Semelda, and I am reading an excerpt from my story, Devil's Mountain, as published in the 2022 edition of The Flying Crapo. The 4-hour climb had begun innocently enough. An easy walk skirted the edge of banana and citrus plantations that overlooked the Picard River Gorge. Scenic viewpoints provided breathtaking panoramas of the surrounding stands of virgin rainforest. Sunlight filtered through the tops of majestic gommier and châtaignier trees onto the forest floor. Thrushes, doves, thrashers, and even a rufous-throated solitaire, the elusive mountain whistler, called from the understory, as if inviting Tessa and Kamani to hike higher. An agouti stopped in its tracks, listening as Tessa snapped its photo. The pungent scent of wild pig rose up to meet her nose. She raised her binoculars and spotted both species of native parrots, the imperial ciceroo and the red-necked jacko. Look, Kim, she said, pointing. Aren't they beautiful? He smiled knowingly. I told you this mountain was special. Tessa was thrilled. She was exploring one of the last island-based rainforests in the world with her steady boyfriend. But today they were on official forestry division business, searching for the nesting site of the black-capped petrel, a bird that hadn't been seen on the mountain for 130 years. It was thought to be extinct in Dominica until Kim found an injured specimen by the roadside in Trafalgar a few years back. Unfortunately, it died that same night, but Kim had a hunch. He suspected there was a cave at the top of Morne Diablotin where the bird might nest. This seabird is really secretive, he said. The only time it comes on land is at night when it flies up into the mountains and dives into its nesting cave. Right, Tessa said over her shoulder. That's the science. But what about the superstition? Because of its nocturnal nesting habits and its odd sounding mating calls, local folks believed it was an evil spirit, he said. So they named it the Dioblatin bird, meaning little devil, and hunted it, possibly to extinction. Kim, why don't you tell me a folk story while we search? What do I get if I do? He said, teasing. She stopped abruptly on the narrow trail and kissed him tenderly. You get to kiss me back, she murmured.
Delia Coffee Wicks reading an excerpt from the story The Gift. Agneta entered the room where the women were praying and keeping watch. She placed the white enamel basin with ice on the plastic sheeting covering Ella's midsection to prevent her belly from swelling. She crossed herself and exited the room. Agneta waited until the house got quiet as everyone settled down for the night. She knew she would not sleep a wink. Her daughter lay dead in one room, while a newborn baby lay sleeping in the other. Agneta checked in on the baby frequently, but the child slept peacefully through the night. For their part, the women worked throughout the evening, keeping watch over the dead body and praying with the family of the deceased whilst they prepared for the funeral next day. Some women busied themselves peeling baskets of ground provisions they had brought with them, while others lit outside fires and cooked in community pots. Some women were responsible for seasoning meats and fish of all kind, while other women kept the children occupied with folk tales.
All right. You are still muted.
As I said, the variety is just tremendous. Every story is just completely different from the next. And yet they still have that common Dominican thread running through them, you know. And so I want to commend Peter Noir for this excellent collection of works. I I encourage everyone to get your copy. You see, I have both. I have two. I have both of them. Get your copies. It's a perfect gift for Christmas, and it will be perfect reading when the summer rolls around and you go on your vacation, while you're on the plane traveling to Dominica, or you're on the beach somewhere. It's a perfect read. Uh, Sharon, I'm going to come to you to just give some closing comments about the whole Pitona project, the experience of what it was like to bring yourself back. I'm imagining that's what you had to do, bring yourself back as a little girl, hearing those stories, recalling them, and then being able to recreate them and shake them up, freshen them up, and give them to somebody who is not Dominican to tell you, no, 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 do this over. Talk about the experience.
I really enjoy Peter Noir because I work in healthcare and the stories I can easily share entertainment, like they like the oral, but sometimes they forget because of dementia. So like me bringing myself back is like I'm traveling into their world. I have to do that for my effectively. So when I bring Peter Noir stories to them, some are able to present them to the group and tell them what they think. And some there's a chance for them to know where I am because they can't travel anymore. So they would understand what Dominica is, where Dominica is. I go on the map, I will show them. And it's like, I never hear something like that. This is so different. For me, going back is like a healing balm also. Like my mind is being healed from all that, what I remember back home, the trauma and all what I have been through, like not being able to really have a childhood. I was Cinderella, so I had to play that part, and it's really easy for me, like talking about in the first person. And most of all is for me back to the residents here because they're no longer able to do that. Some of them they can't remember. They will tell me like maybe a minute story and then they blank, they forget. So that will help them to merge like where they came from and then where we are right now in the world, even though they can see TV, where we are going in the future. What Peter Noir is for them, for even for any readers. My children, when they go and read it, it was like interesting. My kids already know because they have the sci-fi part because they watch Star Wars and all that, so they kind of know what to go back. Like if we go back to Roy Sanford stories, they know these brand new to them. It's kind of scary for most. Some of them wouldn't read their story, but it's a very good educational tool to always have and for us to take with us as a to keep it, preserve it.
So I like the fact that you said that you share the stories with the folks that you take care of who have cognitive deterioration or memory issues, and it's like they travel, because indeed storytelling does take you to a different land. Um, I know some of your writing was also targeted at school children. Have you had the opportunity to present in that audience as well?
Yes, I have. I have my the bully is used in schools.
Mhm.
The residents also like that one too because like you can see different characters and like they like the hairstyles. Like they always
Mhm.
ask me even about my how you do that. That is like as a student tool for bring those books to them because they can hold it. But not many people bring books anymore. They will just put something on YouTube and they can watch it. They don't want that. They can actually read the book. They can they're their family when they come and they say, "Oh, yeah, I have a writer," and they're so proud. It's like she's an author. We have our own hero, and like I feel like proud to be among them. They even though they're not really stuck now, but I'm bringing the outside world to them, and I'm very happy to do that. And my work, my employer told me to do that to share it, and it's very nice.
Well, that's awesome. That's great. Chris, again, I want to tell you thank you so much for the critical part that you play in this project. And really and truly, the stories are like traveling. Like you said, when you went to Dominica, you felt almost like a homecoming because you heard so much um, about Dominica through stories. And so I want to tell you thank you for that, but also I want to give you the opportunity to once again, just express what the experience was like, um, and because you spoke about what the like holding the workshops for the writers so they can improve their skills and all of that, but I'm sure that in return you got to you got something out of it as well. What did it really mean to you to be able to participate in this project?
Uh, Excellent question. Uh, it's it's an unusual thing for a collective of writers from Dominica to ask somebody not from the island to play such a key role in a collection. So I felt very special, and I felt blessed to have that exterior that to have access to those voices and to be able to help people say what they wanted to say in their way. Naturally, I brought my own views and I had questions, and they were people made choices that I wouldn't necessarily have made, but that was the joy of it. I got to experience that and see the richness of the voices, the different perspectives. There are choices that are made in these stories that I would never make, but that's the beauty of it. And if I can be a little philosophical for a second, all science fiction and fantasy is asking the question, who are we? And I think that's a really important question nowadays. And I think that's really important for people who have to struggle to get their cultural voices out there. And I think science fiction and fantasy is a really great way for that to happen, because the folklore or stories we tell ourselves, moving it into science fiction and fantasy expands that voice and makes it a little less insular for people from the outside, so that people from the outside can access that perspective and have more empathy towards it. And that's how I've always, I mean, I'm a lifelong science fiction fantasy reader. So I I learn about other people through their stories. And I think getting that kind of access is a privilege that I was very blessed to have.
As I said, we appreciate you for accepting and for
Yeah.
what, from all reports, um, did an excellent job. I got complaints about you even when I sent out the promotion for today or tonight's program.
Oh no.
But it all spoke towards this person wanted it, had certain standards that had to be met,
Yeah.
and stood his ground. So thank you for that. Sam, come to you. As Chris said, taking our folklore and transitioning it or expanding it, enhancing it to science fiction really expands the creativity and the imagination, because as we grow up, um, we imagine, and we take what is in our environment and we imagine it a little bit more than it is.
On a larger
Fantasy
scale. Yeah.
on a larger scale. Um, and I remember growing up reading a lot of books, reading a lot of Western cowboy books from the US,
And
and
Commando.
and espionage books from based in the US and in Europe, and war stories, all those comic war stories. And your imagination flies because it's so different from what you know.
Right.
But this project takes that and gives the license, so to speak, to really take it to the next level. So I want to commend you and Nicole for that creativity and that thought and that imagination. But I want you to speak to that somewhat. One of you must, or both of you must have been science fiction fans, like Chris says he is. I'm not. Surprisingly, I'm not a science fiction fan. I start reading the books and then I put them down. But I find, because I guess because I identify with the folklores, they have a special draw to me. But talk about, that whole idea, bringing it together.
Right.
What is that like? Yeah.
Well, you say you're not a science fiction fan, but I'm one of the. I've always loved science fiction. Growing up, we always had comic books.
Mhm.
I remember we used to steal my uncle Joseph comic books. He used to have like massive boxes of comic books in his room, and he used to get very upset, but we would steal them and try to read them and try to put them back exactly how he had them. But obviously, he always knew. But and so my favorite comic book character has always been Batman, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people say, "But why? Batman doesn't have any powers." But that's the beauty of it. He doesn't have any power. He's basically a normal human. He's a human being. However, he's considered the world's greatest detective, and all he uses is his intellect. That's his superpower. And that always gets me thinking. But humans we can be so creative, we can be so powerful when we put our minds towards the right things or towards good things. And so that has always made me say, well, Batman is truly the greatest superhero ever, even if he doesn't have superpowers and he can't necessarily dodge bullets, but just with his mind, he can take down almost any of the superpowered people. He can take down Superman, the Man of Steel. So uh, being able to bring our folklores into that kind of realm or that level of where people appreciate it that much, and they can take one story, even if they take one story from one of the books or all of them, and say, this is my favorite character. So my hope is that we can create characters that are not only recurring but also memorable,
Right.
that people can say, hey, in Peter Noir or the Flying Crapo 2, my favorite character is Eston, or whomever it is that you want to you figure that is your hero. So this is my hope. And I am so glad that I got the opportunity. Nicole said, you can do this, Sam, well, she said that since we started our Redemption Road, but I'm happy that she reached out and she said, I know you've been doing this and you've never published anything, but this is your chance. And so I learned from them all. Chris, to reiterate, Chris is a very good editor, and he is very honest, and he's not afraid to tell you, hey, you know what, this isn't gonna work. And that's the kind of people I like to work with, who will tell me straight, Sam, that's not gonna work. You're gonna have to do it over, even when I think it's perfect. Because let's face it, right? I'm sure most writers won't admit that, but they think, hey, what I've written is perfect. Because I noticed that a lot of what I have in my head that I'm going to write sometimes doesn't end up on the page at all. I write something completely different from what's in my mind. And so that's the reason why you need to have a good editor. And of course, folks, if you're looking for an editor, Chris is right there. Reach out to me. And I'll reach out to him if he has the time and so forth. Because even Dominican writers, because he is familiar with our culture, he understands our culture, he understands. Being working on two Peter Noir projects, I think he has what it takes to help you through, get your project going. Because we know plenty of you guys are out there. Before we go, Anthony, I do want to say that we are seriously always looking for new writers at Peter Noir. We have a Facebook page and a Facebook group that you can join reach out to us, let us know, hey, I would like to contribute to the next volume, that kind of thing. You'll find the Flying Crapo Collective on Facebook and the Peter Noir group on Facebook as well. They are both open and free to join, free to follow. And you can also check out the flyingcrapo.com. You get some information on there as well. And I posted the link to the new book on Amazon in the comments. So follow that link and get yourself a copy. Like I said, get for your friends, your families, your enemies, and everybody in between.
Thank you
One
so
thing
much.
before I go, I do want to say a very special thank you to Dr. Simone Matthew. She has been a tremendous help to Peter Noir since the first book came out, and she also wrote the foreword for Peter, the Flying Crapo, from the Folklore to the Future. This one right here. She wrote the foreword on
She
that,
wrote the forward.
and she did an amazing job. And so, Simone, thank you for all your help and your constant support.
All right. And, thank you. I'm sure you also saying thank you to all the writers who contributed.
Well, definitely.
And all the folks who
we won't call
played a
names
part.
because
You
we'd
might forget
people.
somebody.
Yeah.
All right. But I want to say thank you to Sam, Sharon, and Chris for being my guests tonight on This Week in Interview. Congratulations on the launching of the Flying Crapo from Folklore to the Future. Get your copy, folks. Get your copy. It's available on Amazon. And as Sam said, you can follow them on Facebook and you can go to their website, theflyingcrapo.com. You can follow the Facebook group Piton Noir. And you will not be disappointed. It's quite entertaining. It's rich. And it's stimulating. It stimulates your imagination, your creativity, and it helps with your relaxation. Chris mentioned that it was a big part of the work, the effort took place during COVID. And so I can imagine that was part of that therapy as well. So, folks, congratulations again on this wonderful work. And you'll come back. We'll keep reminding them, reminding the audience that if you haven't gotten your copy, or if you read your copy so much that it had dog ears, you need to get a new copy so you can put on your coffee table. So just buy two. One that you're going to take with you and one that's going to be on your coffee table for conversation. But seriously, support the writers. They put out really strong effort, and from all the feedback, the quality is excellent. And so by any standard, not just say it's excellent as a Dominican production, it's excellent on an international standard. And so I encourage you to get it. Folks, thank you so much. If I don't get to speak to you in person again, holiday seasons are approaching, so happy holidays. And come back. Before you do the third book, come back, let's talk some more about the second. By that time, I would have read a few more of the stories, and we can really converse about which ones that did what to me. All right?
Certainly. Thank you, Anthony, for having us.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Sharon. Merry Christmas to you too. Merry Christmas, Chris. Sam, I don't tell you Merry Christmas. I'll talk to you every day.
Chris, good to see you. Thank you again.
You too. Yes.
Yeah, bro.
All right. Yeah, I was going to say, folks, it's another episode of This Week in Interview. I encourage you to get your copy of The Flying Crapo. If you didn't get the first one, this is the first one. You can get it. Just buy both of them. They're a tremendous read. They capture some of our local stories and put them in a different mold, a more expanded mold, a more creative and expansive role. So I want to say good night, folks. I hope you have a great week. If you're celebrating your birthdays this week, happy birthday to you, and anniversaries and so on. Anything that you have a reason to celebrate, I congratulate you and wish you well. Good night, folks.